So this is the Scaling Your Jenkins Job talk. My name is Khai. Just to give you an introduction to myself, I work for HP, and I work on OpenStack, specifically the OpenStack infrastructure team. And this is the information if you need to contact us for any reason. We usually mostly work over IRC as our main communications channel, but we also answer questions from the mailing list. So it's funny, I come to the Jenkins conference a few times, and there's invariably always some talk about Jenkins being a good tool for automating things, but somebody's got to automate the automator. And this is the talk about automating the automator. So for those who don't know what OpenStack is, I'll just give you an introduction. It's basically an open source software for building public and private clouds. You can install it onto your laptop or desktop machine or server and use it to run an infrastructure as a service platform, which is kind of like EC2, Amazon EC2, whatever, that you can run VMs on. So that's, I work on the infrastructure to keep this application running. So I guess the one thing I'd like to stress about this slide is that we run open source software, and the infrastructure is a big fan of open source, and everything we do is open sourced. That goes for all the OpenStack projects, any of the CI around OpenStack, so all the automation and configuration management. So like all of our Puppet manifests are open, that you can view and that you can reuse. And we put a lot of effort in making our downstream able to reuse those components. So if you like, you can check out our repositories, and a lot of companies do, and they reuse what we use for our infrastructure. So just to give you an idea, I'll give you some background on the types of tools we use in our CI platform. We use Storyboard for our issue tracking. We use Git as our SCM. We use Garrett for our code reviews. So that's a code review tool. Zool is something that was created by OpenStack, and that is to run our pipeline of jobs that we have set up in Jenkins. We use Gearman for distributing our jobs. We use Jenkins, obviously, and Jenkins, we've developed two or maybe more, a little bit, maybe more plugins than this, but we use these two plugins mainly. It's the Jenkins Job Builder. Well, I'm sorry, let me take that back. Jenkins Job Builder is not a plugin. It's a Python tool, and I'll go over that today. That's what my talk's about. And we use a Gearman plugin, and that is a plugin for Jenkins, and we use that plugin to distribute our masters. So we have distributed masters. What was the other one? We use DevStack. DevStack is a tool is a development platform for running OpenStack. So we use that for a lot of our testing. We use Nodepool, which is another thing that was created by OpenStack, and that is to allow us to provision our slaves, our Jenkins slaves, and auto-scale those slaves so we can bring them up when we need them, and we kill them when we don't use them. So we use a lot of different tools basically in OpenStack, just to give you an idea of what these are. So this is our kind of workflow that we have. Let me shrink this a little bit. So it's kind of your typical workflow, except it might be a little bit bigger than others. So the blue monitor is your commit to Garrett, which is the first point of entry. And then Garrett is our code review tool. So once it hits Garrett, we code review that manually. And then that gets passed through to Zool, which goes into the Gearman pipeline and onto our Jenkins servers, our Jenkins masters. And you'll see that we have multiple Jenkins masters that run our jobs. So those jobs go through Jenkins, it gets executed, gets passed back, and gets passed back to Garrett. And our developers, the tool they look at kind of on a daily basis is Garrett. And they look there for, once they submit a patch, they get a result, and it will be in our Garrett UI. So they rarely look at Jenkins, actually. So I'll reiterate this, I guess. Our CI workflow, it runs, so the CI workflow I showed you in the last slide, this thing, we use it to run all of our OpenStack jobs. So those are the core OpenStack projects. So to name a few, like Nova, Cinder, Swift, those projects make up OpenStack. We use them for our documentation jobs. So like we have a bunch of documentation for each one of those projects that need to be built, and that goes through Jenkins as well. We use them for translations, and we use them for our operations jobs. So any like we use Puppet, we use mainly Puppet, but we also test our Puppet. So every time we have a change to a Puppet manifest, that goes through our CI, and that gets checked as well. And we have some other utilities and miscellaneous stuff that we use our automation system on. So to give you an idea of the scale that we run our CI at, we have around 500 Git repositories in the OpenStack domain that if you submit a job to, that it'll run, if you submit a patch for, a test will run on it. So that's 500 Git projects, 5,000 that we need, apparently we need 5,000 Jenkins jobs to run the builds and the testing and the documentation for those projects. We have 10 Jenkins masters, and on each master we have about 100 slaves. So we distribute the masters horizontally, and we attach 100 Jenkins masters to each, Jenkins slaves to each master. And all of that kind of allows us to run about 24,000 jobs a day. So anytime you submit a patch, it runs a job, or multiple jobs. And on a heavy-ish day, we'll run probably 24,000 jobs. So I think our system's pretty large scale. So let me take a step back and say, I really like Jenkins. I really think it's a great tool, and this is a great conference. Jenkins is really good until you get to a certain point. And when you run it at this high scale, you'll hit areas where Jenkins may not serve all your needs. And when you have that many projects and you have a branch, obviously everybody runs into this problem at some point probably, but you have so many projects, so many branches, so many jobs and job configurations. And then on top of that, you may have jobs that service some pipeline. And we have a couple of different pipelines. So, we have a check pipeline where we run certain set of jobs on the initial commit, but they don't go through merges yet. And then we'll have another pipeline that when when that patch passes all the tests and passes manual inspection, so code review, then we have another pipeline that will put run those jobs again and merge them. And we have another pipeline for periodic jobs, what we call. So they may run maintenance task at 3 a.m. every day or something like that. So those are different pipelines that we have. So what you wind up with is a large combination of jobs. And we found out early in the process, this is kind of the idea that what we were facing. So each one of these combinations, what a typical Jenkins user would do is create a job for every one of those combinations. You might have to run Nova, might be your project, and you run it against Python 2.7 on master. And those may be your unit tests. And then you have one for performance test. You have one for a different branch, right? So you have all these different combinations, and you have to make up all these different jobs. And typically, what you'll do is you'll name them like this in your Jenkins job configuration. And every time you have to do that, you have to go into the UI, and you have to maybe say duplicate this job and make a little change in your configuration. So I went back and looked at kind of our trend of jobs that we were facing. And we found out this was a problem much earlier on, but I only went back about 2.5 years. And 2.5 years ago, we had 375 jobs. Now we have close to 6,000 jobs. And it's as you can see, it's exponential growth, and we cannot really sustain that. So some of the problems with Jenkins is each job is one XML file. And XML is kind of difficult to maintain. People copy those XMLs, and then they become different from each copy because everybody makes a copy and then changes a little bit. And then you have all these divergent jobs that are kind of hard to debug and maintain, really. And there's no real way to mimic jobs with similar configurations. Now I think the workflow plugin has addressed that. And some of the other plugins as well, like the DSL plugin. But at the time we created the Jenkins Job Builder, those weren't available. So now the Jenkins Job Builder, I think, addresses all those kind of issues. So this is kind of the idea behind the Jenkins Job Builder. It's the command line tool that can manage and create Jenkins jobs. Job definitions are in YAML. Templates, we have these templates that can define multiple jobs in a single file. So if you want to update 10 jobs all at one time, you can edit one file and update all those 10 jobs instead of having to update 10 XML files. So we have support we provide support for Jenkins Job Builder from Python 2.7 to 3.4. We just dropped support for 2.6 because OpenStack made a decision to just drop 2.6 support. Again, I'll reiterate, it's open source. We welcome contributions or, and it's under active development. I've actually met some Jenkins Job Builder contributors here and users, so good to see them. So now we have the Jenkins Job Builder, and what we get is, again, the blue line shows the exponential growth in jobs, but the red line is our Jenkins Job Builder definitions. So those are the files that create all these Jenkins jobs. And those don't increase too much. And right now we have from 22 to 87. Now, we have 87 files, Jenkins Job Builder files, to generate almost 6,000 jobs. So we only have to maintain 87 files. So I think that's kind of like the power of it. So we have this Jenkins Job Builder tool, and I'll just tell you like how we actually use Jenkins Job Builders in our everyday work. So all the jobs all of our Jenkins are managed. All of our Jenkins jobs on Jenkins is managed by Jenkins Job Builder. So no, we don't give access to users to delete jobs or add new jobs. So we don't really use the UI. Everything goes through Jenkins Job Builder. And Jenkins Job Builder is a command line tool that we just execute. Jenkins definitions are in YAML file, so they're nice and easy to read. Job creation, JJB creates multiple jobs from one definition, as I said before. And we have JJB working with Puppet. So anytime there's a change to a JJB definition, so like a job definition, Puppet will rerun Jenkins Job Builder and will update Jenkins with the new jobs. Or if the jobs haven't changed, it will leave it alone. So before I describe I want to describe the jobs in the YAML. But before that, I think I'd like to do a demo just to give you an idea how it works. So the first step is obviously just to install it, pip install Jenkins Job Builder. It's a Python application, and we usually like to release maybe every 3 months, and it's on PyPy. So that's all you do, you just install one time, and then you run Jenkins jobs --conf. That's the configuration file, myjenkins.ini, and I'll show you that. And then you run the update command with the YAML file that contains your definition. So I'll go through that now. So I've set up a Docker image with Jenkins. So if I run a job I have, and it says foo, and what I'm going to do is say, okay, update this foo job for me on Jenkins. Oh, let me increase the font here. I run that, it says it's updated. And then I refresh, and that foo appears. Whoop. And then if I say now I want to update the job and delete old jobs, it'll run and it'll get rid of bar. So no need to restart Jenkins or anything. Just update your jobs like that. So that's the basic idea. Just define your jobs in your YAML and update them in Jenkins. So here's a simple YAML job definition. So this is a file. The file is simple.yaml. And in this file, you have a job and with a name and a node. The node says, run this on a slave named CentOS, basically, is what that says. And all it's doing is setting up a builder. Like in Jenkins, you'll have that configuration, and one of them is that you can run a builder. And you can run a shell builder, you can run a Maven builder. In this case, we're going to run a shell builder. Now what it's going to do is echo, this is my job. So Jenkins Job Builder will take this YAML and convert it to XML, which is the Jenkins Jenkins XML that defines a job in Jenkins. And that's what this looks like. So you can see on the left-hand side, I think the green, it's not really good coloring, sorry about that, but on the top, you'll see it'll produce a simple XML file. Oops. And then down here, you can see the assigned node is CentOS. That's what we defined in our YAML. Node, CentOS. And you'll see that this is where echo, this is my job. That is the shell builder. And so basically this YAML produces this XML, which is what Jenkins understands. And this is the XML that gets uploaded to Jenkins that sets up the job. So a little bit more, the power in Jenkins Gel Builder is actually in the templates. That's what allows you to create many jobs from one file. Okay, so I'll give you an example of that here. Here's a definition of a template. And these are variables. The brackets are variables. And those variables come from the last line, where it says name, pi version, test, branch. So you can set up all your variables in this project. So the project's name is Nova, and all the variables are set up. So you have the pi version and the test. And within each variable, you can set up different things. So like for pi 2.6, you can set it up to run against the stable 1.0 branch. For Python 2.7, you'll want to run it against master, let's say. And for tests, in that case, you want to only fail, on unit test failure or whatever, you may only want to send mail to developers. And on performance test failure, you may only want to send mail to testers. Right? So that's kind of a use case that a lot of people have. So now what that produces, it actually produces 4 jobs with those combinations. And so again, to run Jenkins Job Builder, you can run it with an output command, which outputs the XML into files. and then you just pass it your YAML. And it'll generate these 4 different files. So after the output, the names of those files match up with the green: name, pi version, test, and branch. So what that one YAML file did was produced 4 of these XML files for you, which are 4 Jenkins jobs in these different combinations. So if you need to change a thing in 4 jobs, you can just go to that one file to do that. So to upload those jobs to Jenkins, you just run that command, Jenkins jobs, pass it the configuration, update, and then pass it the YAML file. And this is what the server or the configuration looks like, server INI. Basically, you're just telling it which Jenkins to give it to or to update it to. Does that sound clear to everybody? Is that confusing at all? No? Okay, cool. So I just picked out one of the, jobs to show you in XML. And this happens to be the Nova Pi 27 unit master.xml file. So in this file, you'll see you'll have a git checkout master branch, and you'll want to email to developers in this case. If it was the performance test file, then the mail to would be to testers. Because really that's what you're doing when you're creating new Jenkins jobs. You're copying a job and you're tweaking it a little bit most of the time. And that's what the templates allow you to do. Yeah. Oh, sure. Are you talking about this or? Okay, so I think I've talked about some of the benefits, but I'll reiterate. You'll have, with the Jenkins Job Builder, you have one common definition for multiple jobs. So it allows you to create many jobs or manage many jobs in an efficient manner. It allows you to define common parameters for all jobs in one place as well. So, one example of that, where that could be useful is if you wanted to, maybe you defined in one YAML file, you define 10 Jenkins jobs. And in those 10 Jenkins jobs, you want to change the polling time for your SCM or something like that. You don't have to go into 10 different files to change that. You can change it just in one file, and it gets propagated to 10 jobs. And those jobs just get regenerated in Jenkins or with JJB. So then you just save yourself the trouble of having to do it again and again. You'll have a lot less snowflakes because these jobs you've created the traditional way of going into the UI and making slight modifications. Well, now you can just create all those jobs and they're all common now in one file. Again, job definitions are easy to read and update. And in general, I mean, basically Jenkins Job Builder provides just an easier, more efficient way to create and maintain jobs. When you have lots and lots of jobs, that becomes very important. And if anybody gets to that point, you'll may want to check out Jenkins Job Builder. So in this case, it allowed us to let the developers own their own jobs. So in our CI system, the testers don't create the jobs. It's the developers that create their own jobs, and they maintain their own jobs. So anything that they want changed, they have to put in a change request for it themselves. So other features, I don't know, I just probably went through some of these already, but these are generally like the features of Jenkins Job Builders. It uses the REST API, so the Jenkins REST API, we created a library called Python Jenkins that uses the Jenkins API for logging in and creating a single job, and Jenkins Job Builder uses that library and just expands on that. There's a concept of default definitions in Jenkins Job Builder where you can set up configuration definitions that are the default, and then you can override them in your subsequent jobs. There are macro definitions, which allow you to define a complete plugin that you can then reuse, or you can also set up macros where it's running multiple plugins at a time. And what you can do is reuse those macros in your job definitions. And again, I already told you about the templates. Templates allow you to do that thing where you can create many jobs with just one file. You can group jobs together. There's a feature that allows you to test the jobs before you deploy them. So let me see. If I can give you a demo of that. So instead of update, I go and I run test. And that will show me the XML running on my local machine before it gets deployed to Jenkins. So then you can check that. Let's see. So it's very well documented. It has a unit test for it. So every contribution, usually we like to have a unit test for it. It has a cache that allows you to update jobs in an idempotent way, where if the job already exists, it won't recreate that job if nothing has changed for it. So let me go. So the future improvements for Jenkins Job Builder. So there's no folder support right now, but there's already a couple of patches for that coming in. So I'm imagining it'll be online pretty soon. We'd like to add validation of YAML metadata, improve performance of YAML to XML parsing, improve performance of job uploads. Job uploads can be a little slow, so I think they're only done on a single thread. I think there's some patches coming in for wanting to do it on multiple threads. And additional Jenkins plugin support. So there's a little bit of work, the upfront work, when you need a plugin supported. But I think we already support a little bit more than 200 Jenkins plugins already. So it's quite a big number of plugins that are already supported. And again, it's open source. You're free to contribute. So I added some references to my slides, but I don't want to go through that. These slides will be available at this location, so you can get it from there. But otherwise, I'd like to open it up for questions, if there are any. Could you please use the mic? I think they want everybody to hear.
Hello. So I have a couple of questions about I'm just trying to look at this and compare it with the workflow. It looks like, that could be probably, from the likes of it, that would be a better direction if you have to migrate our existing jobs to workflow, because over there you can see the logical flow and it's in the part of the code, as opposed to here, because your job definition in YAML is probably very different from how it looks like in UI. And also, is there like a, do you care to comment how we can compare these two?
Sure. So, to be honest, I haven't used the workflow plugin. It's relatively new, and this has been around for a long time. That's probably one difference. It seems to me, the workflow plugin has the idea between the workflow plugin and Jenkins Gel Builder is kind of similar. Jenkins Gel Builder is in Python, and I think if you want to use the workflow plugin, it's in Ruby. Not Ruby, sorry, it's Groovy. So you may have people that know Python, and this would be a good direction. If you're more comfortable with Groovy, that would be probably the better direction to go. But in general, they kind of look like they do the same thing, to be honest. So I don't know if I have anything else to say besides that, because I've never used the workflow plugin myself. But they accomplish the same thing, I think.
The only thing I want to comment is because when you look at, and when we show in our organization, this is how the JJB job looks like. It's hard to correlate one-to-one how it looks like on the UI.
Yeah,
because
okay.
It's like a job creation engine, which is very different from, whereas in workflow, it looks like, okay, it's easy to understand what you're trying to do is
I can comment on that. I don't know how the workflow can be automated, to be honest. JJB is very easy to automate because it's a command line tool. The workflow plugin, it's in Jenkins. You have to go into the UI looks like you have to script it in the UI. But we like the automation part a lot. So if we wanted to automate stuff, I think from what I've seen, I go with the Jenkins Job Builder. But taking back, we don't use the Jenkins UI. We almost like it if we love the Jenkins engine, but we don't like the UI. So we never look at the UI. It's not important to us. We like it for the engine part. And I wish that actually Jenkins had two pieces, the UI piece and then service piece.
Yeah, I second you on that. It's better if we can do all the jobs inside a kind of a script or code rather than going to UI.
Yeah, so I hope I answered your question.
Yep. But by the way, are you planning to support workflow in JJB?
Well, I don't see why we couldn't. I've already seen contributions for the DSL plugin, so it's kind of ironic. But yeah, you can initiate the DSL plugin using Jenkins Job Builder, which is kind of similar in what they do.
Oh, thank you.
That was basically my question. I can see them being complementary. We use the workflow plugin, but I can see some value to what you're doing as well.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I do a similar thing that you do, except I use the DSL plugin, and I use property files to define applications, which generates when you execute our Gradle scripts. It will generate a couple dozen jobs that defines the pipeline. One of the things I was wondering about with yours is if I have a lot of one-off situations where I need to go into my Groovy code and update because a job will be a little bit differently. Like if it's this series of applications over here in this group, I need to do a different versioning or something. Do you have situations like that with the Jenkins Job Builder? I'm not familiar with it, so I just wanted to see how that was handled with that.
Yeah, we do have that situation. I mean, that's mostly what it's built for. We set up variables that can be overridden and that can be, added to or whatever, overridden, override. Yeah, so I mean, that's how we handle it mostly. I think, I don't know if that's the same. It sounds like you handle it the same way with the DSL plugin.
Yeah, I have to just go into the code and like, if you're this, do this, but I have to make that change. And we have the same thing where we try not to do any configuration in the Jenkins GUI, except in like some kind of crazy deployment nightmare or something, and then we make sure to refactor that code back to the DSL. So I was just curious how it was handled because with the Jenkins Job Builder. So
Yeah, it's kind of probably handled the same way. It's the definition of all these variables that then you change over time. For different jobs.
okay, thanks.
Sure.
Do you have any support for secrets or credentials using the Jenkins Builder so that we don't have to commit passwords to source to use them in our builds?
Well, we actually do that with Puppet. We use the Hira. And that is only kept on the one machine. Not the one machine, but the machine that builds the nodes that we use for running the jobs.
Cool.
Oh,
Thank you.
so there you go. There's a plugin for it, and JJB supports that plugin. This is the answer. Yeah, I don't know all the plugins that are supported in JJB, anyways. Ari. So, credentials bind plugin. So actually, Ari has another Jenkins Job Builder talk later on, and I think he'll go into a lot more detail, and he'll have a more complex scenario, I think, if you are more interested in that. But thank you for. Oh, actually, I wanted to say one more thing. I think the workflow plugin, I think the one big benefit over Jenkins Job Builder is that it is in Groovy, so you have the power of the Groovy language. And the Jenkins Gel Builder, you're just defining YAML. So that's one big benefit I didn't think of. But there's no more questions. Thank you for attending. And I was asked to put it in the slides so you remember to give feedback. Thank you.